Well, that's very abrupt. Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. As you can see, if you are seeing this, there is no image of me, and instead, it is the surface in front of my computer, and I'm starting our semi deep dive into tabletop RPGs for Black History Month a little early because a day early because I have a huge stack. Now, as a person of color, one of a number of my tabletop RPG desires is that when I look for a game or a supplement or an addition to a game or something like that, I kind of look at them and go, I wonder if this would fit into my sensibilities. And so I decided to, pull some games off my shelf and supplements and things of that nature, adventures and whatnot. And I found out that I've got a literal month full, not including Saturdays and Sundays, when I broadcast Monday through Friday. So today, a day early, technically, I'm just going to go through 20 plus games that I have and let you guys see them. Some of them are known, some of them are old, some come from the dreaded, Wizards of the Coast, but I got them before they were already purchased and they happen to have been developed before all the hoopla came through. So whatever. The other thing I wanted to do is state that during this, not just today, but for the rest of the month, my desire is not to be exclusive, but to be inclusive. So when I show off some of these games, you're going to notice like that some of the designers, that wasn't their intention, but I feel like the game does really embrace this ability to for people from different backgrounds and different ethnicities and cultures to go, you know what? I like to throw a little bit of myself in there. And I think some of these games really do not put themselves in a way. Now they're going to be, and I hope I can find a bunch of uh, a number of ones that didn't make the list but are honorary. And really, it's these are games that by design, the designers really to didn't want to put the rules or the setting in the way of the players. So, and this was mentioned by you guys, my co-hosts on the show previously, that like there are games that don't mention specified or make allusions to real world cultures or anything like that. So, okay. Oh no. Oh, you guys are silly. All right, Z. Okay, so here's the first one, and this is Feng Shui, a movie, an action movie role playing game. This game, this is, I believe, a second edition, possibly a third edition and reprinting. There's another game called HCAT, Hong Kong Action Theater, that didn't do as well in this genre. But the reason why I love this game is that it really, really goes over the top to embrace everything about Hong Kong action. Now you might say, well, that's not Black history. But the point is, what I love about this particular role-playing game is that it's like it's unapologetic in its desire to grasp onto all the tendrils and threads of Hong Kong action, and I really appreciate that. This game almost, um, although there's plenty of Americanized action movies and such, and Hollywood action, it really dominates the world. But a lot of that action, from Mission Impossible 2 to John Wick to the movie Shoot 'Em Up, the movie Wanted, and so many gun fu and martial arts movies really are embraced by this game. And this game is unapologetic in embracing Chinese, Hong Kong action cinema, and I really love it for that fact. So it's Feng Shui. Here's the back. There's some. These are some of the symbols of a number of the factions in the game, and this one's made by Atlas Games. All right. Okay. This one, this stack, I got to put in here because Wow. And I got to talk about it too. And the reason for this stack is because, well, my name's kind of in it. Specifically, specifically this the second book. But as you can tell, Level Up Advanced Fifth Edition. It within the last month, there's been a number of ups and downs and highs and lows, and eventually winning on this. End World is really attempting to try to make this system, which is rewritten from fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons, to make this an open game license. But the reason I bring this out here, and yes, these are my leatherette style books. The reason why I bring up Level Up fifth edition is only for a simple thing, and that is the character creation portion of this game. Now, myself and about 30 other people were brought in to write this game from the ground up, and as a pseudo cultural consultant, I helped in many parts, and so many of the other designers who are much better than I am, to try to make this game as inclusive as possible. And in one of those things is a game design mechanism, which is the ability when you design a character, you don't pick a race. Instead, you pick a heritage. Let's see if I can go to origins here. Instead, you pick a heritage, and you get a heritage gift from that, and then you pick a culture. So there are dwarves and dragonborn and all that kind of stuff, and there's an easy mechanism to mix the cultures, as well as a lot of the artwork in here. But when you get past that, we get into cultures, and by combining the cultures and your heritage, you are able to make a very dynamic character, and you can very easily, as a game master or um, as a dungeon master or whatnot, create a very intricate game world. So I really appreciate the fact that they really wanted to separate cultures from heritage, and I really appreciate that. You can have cosmopolitan and desert peoples and all that kind of stuff. This is the monstrous book, the monster book, Monstrous Menagerie. I just had the Adventurer's Guide, and of course, my favorite, because my name's in it, Trials and Treasures, and which is all the third pillar portion of the game, as well as, excuse me, as well as all the treasures and rewards that you can get. All right, here we got another one. The Expanse. If you're a sci-fi head, the television show is excellent. I'm going to do another watch through. I love The Expanse, and um, let's see. John Wright mentioned Zulu. Naka looks interesting, though I haven't tried it yet. It's a hex-based war game based on the rise of Shaka Zulu and his empire. I haven't heard of that. Hmm. I'd look into something like that. I definitely will. Thank you very much for that. And by the way, guys, if you have a question or something in the chat, please do. Please just mention something or whatever. It is getting to the point where I may need to have people like in caps write like DBJ or question at the beginning of the comment because it is getting to that. But yeah, absolutely. But The Expanse is bar none an excellent hard sci-fi television show, and the game goes into it has the word space to go into a lot of detail about the the three, I'll say, three main factions or cultures in the world of the Expanse. So the world of the Expanse is one in which our solar system is beginning to get populated. Earth is one faction of a political war. Mars is the second, and then there's the belt. That's the asteroid belt, and those factions are going against each other. The show really goes to a lot of politics. Again, it's very hard sci-fi. This system uses. Let's see if we can turn it on the back here. System uses the Age system, the adventure game engine, and it's basically 2d6 plus 1d6, and you earn through die rolls, you earn points to allow you to spend those points on stunts, and it's pretty cool. And let's see. Okay. uh Z says, I will shill once again. Okay. Songwoven is running a live play of Level Up 5e on Twitch at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Fridays. Every Friday. It's pretty good, and the DM is great at torturing his players. That's always a good thing. Okay. Actually, since you decided to shill, I'm going to make sure that gets popped up here so other people can see it. I'll leave it up there as long as I can until I get some other comments here. Oh, that's me. I'm not one of his players. I'm not in that live stream. Oh, that's sweet. Don't be a belter. It sucks. I mean, the group is awesome, but if they bring you in to a gravity well, you will die. Yes, the first episode of that television show torturing the torturing the belter because of the um, Earth's air quotes high gravity because of their limited or low gravity and such. Oh yeah. Now this one, yes, I know. Take it easy. Take it easy. Yes, it is from Dungeons and Dragons. It is from Wizards of the Coast, and it's Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel. And Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel was specifically brought together by a designer to find people of different cultures, and they decided to put together a an adventure book that takes place in a place known as the that begins in a place known as the Radiant Citadel. It's like it's loosely described as a very large diamond floating in ethereal sea. Here's a side view as land spirals around it, and then there are these are humanoid like cultures that exist out in the ethereal sea, and then there are many different types of adventures as the player characters go to different worlds, um different prime material plane worlds, and those prime material plane worlds are emblematic of various real world life cultures. Writ fantastic, and it's really cool. This book has been given, despite during its development, people were like trashing it because they're like, I don't understand, the whole everyone anti woke, anti diversity, anti inclusion. But after its release, a lot of people were praising its design for the adventures, from uh, Korean and African and so many um, um, South American artists and writers and such to bring this together. And I like a lot of the adventures. They The win conditions aren't kill everybody, and I really appreciate that. There's some mystery, there's some negotiation, and then there's a lot of like lore. And of course, each of these adventures gives you a little bit of information to maybe want to stay in those places. So there are uh, lots of bits and pieces of information if you want to expand that in and use some real world names and culture and food and that kind of thing. All right. This, I don't even know if you could see this. It's matte. It's called Scavenger. Yeah, Zamar says, I do wish they should have pushed the differences in the cultures a bit more and the clashes that would have come from the differences, but it's a decent book. Mind you, hey, listen, this book was written by Wizards of the Coast. It's possible they might have toned that down a bit. Um, but yeah, I do wish they could have pushed it a little bit more, but I think they wanted to keep it more upbeat and fantastical. All right, so this here is Scavenger, and there's the slipcase for it. Let me place this aside. This is a world book, uh, fifth edition compatible. I have a multiple. I think I have multiple interviews with the gentleman who wrote this. And it's absolutely beautiful. And the concept of Scavenger is a Bronze Age world that is undergoing a cataclysm, and under underneath this cataclysm, they found a way to go to another world. And as one world is being torn apart, you play as scavengers traveling out across the world to this other dimension to gather trinkets and baubles and things that might maybe one day all of the people in the current world could move over to this new world before the world gets destroyed. So there's a bit of a timer, a clock in the background that's going on. And what I love about this is there's something about Bronze Age gaming that is like a Z's like, okay, DBJ, that is a beautiful book, just absolutely gorgeous. I might just get it just for the sake of having that black diamond in my bookcase. Yeah, it's got a it's. I mean the matte black slipcover with the even on camera you really can't see it, but there's like you could see the S, and then there's like cracks in it, almost like it's marble cracks and such. It's pretty gorgeous, and I love the feel of it too. And this Bronze Age style game. I mean, just taking a look at some of the art, it's very. What's I'm trying to think of what. Oh, Ricker says, is it truly a TTRPG if it's 5e compatible, or is it just a setting? This is just a setting with a lot of the rules manipulated and twisted, and there's like these bloodstone shards that are brought over from the other world back to the world being torn apart. And this actually came about much. What's the game called? Tales from the Loop. So the TTRPG Tales from the Loop and Things from the Flood was actually written with the art done first, and then the tabletop RPG written for it. And the history of this actually came about that way. There was an artist who was doing a lot of work. Um, Marquise Hardis, just contacted him and said, "I would love to make an RPG based around based around your artwork," and then that became the impetus for this. So let's see here. World building art, world building, writing, game mechanics. Alexandru Negotia, Negoita. Let's see if I get that. There we go. Yeah. This book was released. I don't have the art book, but this book was released with the art separate. So it's pretty interesting. Let's see if I got it. Let's see. There's some art here. I want to flip through the book so you guys can see a lot of the art. I'm super impressed by it. And there's just like, I mean, there's some gorgeous pieces of art and monsters in here. Um, to say that this is fifth edition compatible kind of kind of lessens the impact of this game, because it is not what I've been calling Eurocentric, meaning like it again, it's very Bronze Age, so it's much more survivalistic, nomadic. Um, I would say I don't know how to compare it. Dark Sun ish. Someone says, "Oh no, they're only selling a PDF. Are you serious? Go to let's see if I can go to the back. Go to shardstone.net. I don't know if it's coming up here. You can't see it. It's printed on the back of the book. Go to shardstone.net. See if they have physical copies of this book. But the other thing I like about it is it reminds me very much of Pangea, in a sense of, when I say it's non-Eurocentric, I don't think it's culturally centralized in any real world thing. It's almost like an amalgam of a number of various different Bronze Age cultures. And I really appreciate that, because for me, it really pulls me out of like, what do I think of today? how do they design different kingdoms? Are they matriarchal? Are they nomadic? And things like that. So yeah, there's some beautiful art in this book, and I feel like it really brings you into um it really draws you in. So to, Rick says, to be honest, even as someone from Europe, I'm suffering from Eurocentric TTRPG settings. Yeah, and listen, I'm going to bring up some Eurocentric settings that are that are hyper Eurocentric. That's kind of a strange thing to say, um, but I do appreciate things that really embrace their own cultures. Oh, by the way, in my slipcover set, there's a map. I don't want to open them up because you really won't be able to. A map of both the destroyed region and the brand new region that they're going to. So it's a bit of hyper exploratory. Mike says, sounds like my kind of jam, survival and grit. Yeah, oh yeah. Now I got to put this one. I should have put this first. This is Coyote and Crow, the utopia punk role playing game designed and made for indigenous folk. And I really love this. Even just from the cover of this, it's colorful and hopeful, and it's there are when this was being put out, there was a small but vocal group of people on either side of the issue of Coyote and Crow even existing. And one side of the issue was like, we don't need it. It's trying to be divisive and blah blah blah. And I'm going like, indigenous people here in the states and in North America. I'll explain what I mean by utopia punk in a minute. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm like, wait a minute. No one complains when we see another sword and sorcery book, but the few and far between indigenous folk that want to actually bring about something that promotes their culture and stuff, people have a problem with. Now, the opposite side of that, which I think is also equally completely ridiculous, is like the fact that some people have it in their head that we shouldn't play this game of indigenous folk because it would be disrespectful. And I'm going, no, buy the book and play it. That's the whole point of role playing games, to put yourself in the shoes of other people. And so I think both sides are ridiculous. Utopia punk, as I start to flip through this book, for me, what I mean by utopia punk is it's like Star Trek meets Wakanda. And so, for example, in Star Trek, uh, in much of Star Trek, it's not adventuring inside of the Federation, is exploring outside. And so this game focuses on a city known as Cahokia, and I'm trying to pronounce it without it could be Cahokia, but I believe there's no emphasis on any particular syllable. So I believe it's pronounced Cahokia. There's a pronunciation guide in here, and woof, right over my head because I got a lazy tongue. But this book has a very large font to it. So while it's a hefty book, you can fly through this. One of the major things about this book, though, yes, he's like, ugh, I hate that. Don't play it because you're not X culture. Yeah. Do you want the game to die? Do you want it to fail? Yeah. Runs off to rage out. Yeah, it's completely ridiculous. I was like, what? That's it- that. Oh man, I don't know how. That's dumb. Yeah, yeah. I don't have the D20 one. Of John Wright brings up Nyambe African Adventures is a D20 OGL RPG from Atlas Games. It looks really cool as well, and I don't have it. I don't know if I'll be able to get it in enough time for this. I'm trying to get to some of the artwork in here. Let me flip through it. A large chunk of this book deals with what indigenous culture would be without colonization, and it by eliminating some of the things that we take for granted that has been brought over to uh, this side of the world, and then what the culture would then have developed into is makes this world very very unique. Michael says my mother would have loved Coyote and Crow, indigenous here. Yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Rickard says, "How does the First Nation peoples feel about it? Those that even care about TTRPGs, that is. They're really bullish about this game. One of the problems that the designer had to go through was the fact that a lot of the culture is verbal, and they didn't consider indigenous peoples never considered the entire Americas as one. So there's a lot of different language variations. A lot of that culture has been lost. So the game tried to bring as many commonalities together while still being respectful of various different nations without disrespecting them. So yeah, there's some there there is some controversy because some of the native peoples are like, well, what about us? And what about us? And what about us? And it can be difficult to navigate that as a designer. I could see. This game is a D12 system, D12 dice pool system, and one of the funny things. Oh no, Dead Man says Shardstone does not have the hard copy of the rules books, only the PDFs. Damn, you can't even get them on drive through. I'm gonna have to have a talk with him. I'm gonna have to have a talk. Um, so a lot of words in the beginning of this book have to deal with the cultural differences, and it flies through pretty quick. Like um, Cahokia is a utopian city where the people have settled in, and some people have called this Wakanda for First Nation, and I don't disagree. I don't think that's a bad a bad analogy, right? Um, and part of that is the fact that the there's something called a Adamandi that is similar to the origins in Wakanda. A meteor struck the Earth. It has gotten into the food system. It can be used and harnessed to increase one's physical and mental capabilities and things of that nature. Deadman says the first I heard of Coyote and Crow was from Alina Pete, a First Nation native, and she likes the game. Yes, it is a D12 dice pool system, and part of the D12 actually is in world because they use a base 12 numerical system. So there are 12 hours in a day, and it it's it can get a little complicated math wise when you go, wait, each hour for them is 12, but for us is a 24-hour day. So does that mean every hour for us is 2 hours, for them it's considered an hour? And then they break down the 2 hours that's an hour for them into 12-minute 12 increments. It could be a little bit daunting. So yeah, um it is a D12 system, dice pool system. It uses a cube. Let me see if the character sheet here. Here we go. This is a map of Cahokia, and they have like a monorail system and a subterranean system. There isn't any organized. Uh, there's no organized industrialness for hunting. And let's see if I can use my fingers to surround this. Uh, they use a cubic stat system, very much like White Wolf, in the sense that you have like physical stats, mental stats, social stats, and then along with the cube, when you read them across, you also have them going up and down. So you have like active stats and defensive stats and derived stats. So it uses like a cube. I'm calling it a cubic system, and it uses a D12. So whatever your stat number is from 1 through 5 or whatever, and then you have skills, and they go from 0 up to however high they are. So if you have a stat of 3 plus a skill of 2, you roll 5d12 and you try to beat a difficulty number. And it's actually pretty simple. It's pretty darn simple. Coyote and Crow isn't bad, and there's a number of things online that talk about them. Rickard says, I mean, nothing is perfect. There's so many Nordic Viking TTRPGs, out there that miss the mark so hard on the nuanced stuff, but can still, um, but can still be good enough in a TTRPG context. Exactly. And there's also a fine line between real world actual history and cinematics and the role playing game world, right? Like there you can only you can only get only become so specific. All right, I'm going to have to move through this a little quicker. This is Borakobos, The Lost Isles. And this is from Legendary Games. And this is a 5th edition 5th edition supplement, and it involves the Caribbean islands and begins with the era of the Tiano people before colonization and piracy, and using the Caribbean Isles to bring over, to mine salt and sugar and slavery and things of that nature. And so, in this setting, this is a fantasy setting before the introduction of foreign peoples, and it's it's an excellent book. It's basically the Caribbean Isles become an archipelago of conflict amongst the peoples that are there, and the gods that they worship, and the player characters become pawns in a war amongst the elemental gods. And looks like me. Minus the six pack, of course. Anyway, the because of so many storms that happen in real life, it was writ large in this fantastical kind of world, and it's pretty interesting, and I love it. There are like volcanic people, which are a combination of fire and earth, and then there's a storm race that's a combination of wind and water. And I know there are pictures in here. Just going, I'm getting to the end here where you have all the adventure and some of the monsters. But let's see if I can get to some of the races so you can see. Uh, these are some of the gods. Oops, my. Let's see what the people have to say. Zamar says it's a Japanese spin-off of a Japanese TRPG, which is a spin-off of, I think, AD&D. The Goblin Slayer book is 615-page chunker. Wow. With only 4 to 6 artworks. And a third of that is source info. Yeah, you know what? Sometimes when like you have a great idea in your head, and then shark people, mer people, yeah, you have a great idea in your head, and then you realize how much artwork costs. And now, of course, we have the issue with AI art, the Horukan. Let's see, the Horukan elemental folk that you can play as a player character. And of course, we have to have bird folk Iguanca and the humans, the TNM, plainly human, and the Wolukan, the volcanic people. Samara says it has a very unique rule set and feel that does not feel like most TRPG games I have read or run, and I have 30 or so different systems. Ooh, should have invited you on. Show off your collection, right? But anyway, Bor Boricubos, the Lost Isles. It is based on Caribbean culture in a fantastical world, and I really like this. This is from Legendary Games, and actually, Legendary Games has a number of these culturally biased settings, and kind of cool. Because it's not too worried about ad art for the next 4 to 5 years at least. Ah, yeah. Um, Here's the game. Gotta talk about it a lot. Setting is interesting. It's held back by both a complex worldview setting just because of the technology involved in it and a rule set, but Eclipse Phase, this is second edition. I also have the first edition. I believe the first edition books are free online. um from a It's from a Post-Human Studios, and it was another studio before this. But what I love about Eclipse Phase is it's the role-playing game of transhuman survival, And what I love about it is it takes everything that we know today and throws it in the trash. All of our petty arguments, whether it's political or genderfied or economic or something, this just takes all that and goes, oh, you think you got problems today? You're children. Wait till the future happens. Wait till transhumanity expands out there into the real world, out into the our known world, and see what happens. And what I mean by that is when death becomes a side note, and when gender becomes just picking a new gender is like putting on a new set of clothes, and when um, universal basic income is a real thing, and what else? Um, um, it's just a if you've ever liked the show, what's the show called? My brain just farted. Altered Carbon, The Expanse, Eclipse Phase takes that even further, and it is I just love it. I love the fact that I love this game because much of the background of this game is rethinking our society today, and I think it actually it in many ways it can give people not just a headache, but even make them l- how do I say, this game can push people away because it asks the hard questions and confronts the hard questions. And when you have player characters that can be, play as a drone, or like, have hands for their feet because they live in light gravity and zero gravity, or you can become a digital life form, or live in a crab body and be careful, become an avian or something. It's pretty interesting. Something else that's really embraced by this game is the multiculturalism, because most earth cultures will have spread throughout our solar system by that time. So you know racial differences really mean zero in this setting. It's all about biological choices. Then there's also the idea of uplifted animals, and how would you find it icky to have a relationship with, say, this person who's an uplifted gorilla? Like, in the future, will that be a thing? Having relationships with machines and stuff. It's pretty cool. Anyway, you guys are mentioning Deadman says all the EP books are available online from the developer's WordPress site. They sure are, and they are they have an OGL and are inclusive to people creating stuff for their system. Samara says, I've decided that I will be releasing my game. When I finish writing my rule set, I will be releasing it without art, and I will update it with art as time goes by, then introduce print on demand. Ooh, there you go. Hey, you got ahead of me, Rickard, because I have Shadowrun. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, all the first edition books are now. First edition is still good. They tightened up the rule set, because it's not the rule set, the character creation, because it was so open ended that some people found it, not only was it difficult to get players in the game, but then when you have to have so many options with people who don't understand what the setting is about, and it's just very different. It's a very different culture, very different system. Um, just our own solar system just makes it feel like um, our petty problems today pale in comparison and disappear under the weight of this technological advancement, and I love it for that reason. All right, let's pull one out because somebody mentioned it. Talk, and also the fact about not wanting to get their books thumbed through. First edition Shadowrun. Look at this. This book is falling apart at the edges. It's creased to hell. It's got the spine is busted. I loved myself some Shadowrun. Love myself some Shadowrun. What this game uh this game takes place, at least the main part takes place in Seattle, in a futuristic Seattle. Even the layout on this first edition book is like, it's all right. It hadn't caught. This was at a period of time where we really hadn't caught up with um, the design mechanisms that we have today. And let's see, what was this book? Oh man, is it going to fall apart on me? 1989. 1989 FASA. So anyway, original Shadowrun. Now, for a lot of people who don't know, I mean, a lot of people understand that Shadowrun is like Magic plus Cyberpunk, but there's also a major part of this setting that is very much a part of um, indigenous people's culture. And there are a lot of supplements connected to Shadowrun that really deal with that. I mean, here are the monsters like Wendigo and a Sasquatch. Of course, you have to have fantasy things like unicorns and orcs and ogres and such, but we still have the Phoenix and Naga. And these are just monsters that are very common in like Dungeons and Dragons, but Shadowrun also goes into a lot of indigenous culture. Of course, writ with Seattle on the Pacific Northwest map. Also, a lot of mysticism and things like that. And I think Shadowrun is my choice, whether they intended to or not. But as Shadowrun has expanded, they tried to include a lot of different cultures and how what would they be like with if mysticism grew once again in their world. And so I really love this game. Shadowrun, the best setting. I'll never play it. Yeah, bucket of dice for this game. Yeah, Mike's like we played the death out of Shadowrun. Ours fell apart. Yeah, bucket of dice. Oh man, this is a this is an OSR game that I don't think gets enough love out there. I think Electric Bastion Lands and Troika and Into the Odd are talked about more than the UVG. The UVG is the Ultraviolet Grasslands and the Black City. Psychedelic metal role playing from Wizard Thief Fighter Studios. And this book was written, the art and the writing was written by one individual, or primarily one individual. And what I love about the Ultraviolet Grasslands, do I have the map? Is the map stuck in here? What I love about this is it's kind of got a ink splatter art to it, and it uses um ink splatter art that doesn't quite describe everything, so it has a lot of blank spaces for you to fill it in. It's all about exploration, and the layout of this book is excellent because 99.9% of this book is laid out as I'm holding it open, meaning that as you go through the ultraviolet grasslands, and the point of this book is actually to go from the beginning of this book to the end. So it's not only a setting book, it's an adventure book as well. And there's a map, and the map starts at one location, and it's like a ribbon that goes all the way to as set on the beginning of the book, the Black City. So you start out at number one and you just go through, and you would think that, oh well, I guess this is like a railroad. It's not it's not a railroad because there's a section for travel options. As you move along, there are other, it's like a point crawl, and you move from one place to another, and when you flip each page, it gives you everything you need to know on 2 pages on a book spread. So when you go to, say, point number 3, Steps of the Lime Nomads, it gives you all the information you need. When you go to the next one, Lavender City Cliffs and City of the Nomads, and it gives you what you need. And then you go to the next page, the Porcelain Citadel, and this is excellently laid out. There's like maps in it. There's artwork that you could maybe share with people that shows you what it is, but not shows you what it is. This is an excellent book. It gives you plenty of random tables. It gives you weather and misfortunes, treasures, and it has a extremely helpful dungeon masters um, system for having monsters. And so for it's really difficult to point into something like this, but so let's say right here there's a word that says nest of crows, and it says L8 plus 1d8. And so L is the level of the monster, and there's a die. So, I mean, not a die, somewhere, a number 8, number 2, number 3. And that's what you add to a d20 when you confront your players. And it's super simple to make a monster. You just decide what level you want it to be, and that's pretty much their bonuses and damage, um, and their hit points and such. It's pretty easy system. Let me get back to the co-host here. Eclipse Phase is Creative Commons by NCSA 4.0, not OGL. Oh, it's Creative Commons. Ah, that's right. That's right. Rickard, watch your back, shoot straight, conserve ammo, and never ever cut a deal with the dragon. Shadowrun, yeah, you got to make a T-shirt with that on it. It says, now I'm wondering if there would be an interest in streamlined systems that would support the Shadowrun setting. I bet there would. I bet there would. There's a lot of old Shadowrun stuff that's good, but the system is a little bit bonkers. Um, Now, for Ultraviolet Grasslands, the why I'm picking this as a cultural inclusive thing is because this doesn't really have anything to do with any Earth-like culture at all, which means that there's plenty of space to have every other culture in it that you'd ever want. um, there's even the Black City when you get to the end where you hopefully you're high enough level. There are a billion and one little random tables that you can create all kinds of environments. They talk about the fractal city and the heroes. It has a CCAT system. CCAT stands for their attributes. So it's strength, endurance, agility, charisma, aura, and thought. Uh, CCAT. It's pretty silly. But this is awesome. This is an awesome book. I really love it. Just reading through it reads kind of like an adventure novel as well, and the artwork. So UVG, pick that up if you're an OSR type of individual. Um, it's very science fantasy, and I love it. We're getting to the end here, so I want to go through these real quick. Within the Ring of Fire. Within the Ring of Fire is a role playing game um, based on 77-day throne system, which is pretty strange. And I photocopied the calendar out of here. This is the character sheet. It uses a 2d8 system, 2d8 exploding die system. It has a strange 77-day calendar. Each day represents a throne because there are different each day represents a different god, and within the Ring of Fire is a world that was like piecemeal put together by the gods, and they finally came to a bit of a stalemate. So the world's a little bit of like a hodgepodge, and I love that. And so like day 35, the day of purity, day 41, the day of conception, day 64, the day of onyx, day number 8, the day of numbers, day 1, the day of all dawn, and every day has a different number of daylight hours and nighttime hours, and they don't follow a lunar cycle. They follow the cycle of the gods. It's pretty interesting. Um, this game is a bit hardcore. There's like cannibalism and other kinds of things in there. Um, this has a very large font to it, so it's pretty easy to read and go through. It uses a number of weapons and armor and things uh, taken from world cultures that I really appreciate. And so while this doesn't necessarily embrace, it's not like, oh, this is from India, this is from Japan. It really makes an amalgam of a lot of those things. And a lot of the characters created are based off of a lot of the characters and such are based off of elementalism. So for example, there's a race in here that is related to fire, and culturally they don't drink water. They don't even wash up with water because they are vulnerable to to water and such, which is pretty strange. Yes, I kept calling it Embady, but that isn't. It's Ember. Yeah, I get it, Mike. Mm, yeah, Dead Man's like the mean potential of Shadowrun is nearly off the chart. Remember when dealing with dragons, you are a little crunchy and taste good with ketchup. Yeah, don't go to the meetings. Mm-mm-mm. Zamara says, I'm being careful with how I am copywriting my book. I am trying to make it so that I can encourage people to make setting books for my system. I'm making 2 source books right now. Ooh. You're gonna have to tell me how that goes. All right, here we got another book. Edrigor. This one had some contention because this was released during the early days of Kickstarter, and it was highly delayed and such. Edrigor is based on the Fate system. Let's see if it's on the back here. Yeah, there we go. Powered by Fate and written by the Council of Fools. This is another First Nation TTRPG, and it's based on the Fate system, and it is a fantasy post-apocalyptic world in which you play native peoples trying to navigate this new world. And it is anti-technological because that is the thing that brought about the apocalypse. And so spoken word, song, that kind of thing, setting up totems to keep out evil spirits and such is part of this. Reestablishing contact with other tribal folks that are still suffering. It's really interesting, and I love how they modified the fate aspect system um, to really bring in the power of this game isn't all about killing things or being killed. It is far more, just because of how fate and aspects work, it's far more about reestablishing connections, travel, discovery, um, defending things, hunting, fighting for survival in a harsh land because of the elements and things like that. And then, of course, you have all of the post-apocalyptic parts where maybe there's like undead or ghosts or demons or something, and maybe it's far better to use some kind of exorcism to allow their souls to move on than it would be to stay and fight. Um, yeah, you could play this straight up as a war game, but I think you lose a large part of this game. Um, Edrigor is it the red font in it is a little bit problematic trying to read it, especially because they put a lot of the story elements in that red font against this parchment styled paper. Um, that part of it, I'm not really certain about, and I also wish they had a little bigger NPC adversary portion of it, but it's very easy. Fate is very easy to make up your own. So make up your own like um, adversaries and things like that because it's just basically a bunch of aspects. And it goes into a number of the movies and television shows that this is based off of, like Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind and The Grudge and Princess Mononoke, um, that kind of thing. Science Ninja Team Gotchaman, aka Battle of the Planets. Yeah, it's kind of cool. So anyway, if you are someone who likes the Fate system, I would really suggest getting Edrigor, the role playing guide and the core book, and again, powered by Fate. All right. Samara says to make a setting book using my system shortly after it comes out, or to sell it or offer it for free, which is what I want people to do with my system. I make the rules, you make the world. Ooh, that's awesome. This is Ankur, Kingdom of the Gods, and Ankur, Land of the First Peoples. This book here is the first main book by Chris Miller, and this is a supplement for it that goes on into the lands of Africa. This is a ancient aliens system, a book which also uses a D12 system. Okay, how do I explain this? If you are someone who believes in Planet X and that there's supposedly a 10th planet out there, or actually now it would be the ninth planet out there, that revolves around Earth every 10,000 years, this is the one for you. This takes place like 20,000 years in the past. This is prehistoric, and talks about, this is the role playing game of the reality of the idea that there are alien peoples out there on a planet that comes by every 10,000 years, and this takes place when that planet has come by on that 10,000 year journey. Yeah, they in this book they call it Naburu, and it deals with the yes, you're absolutely right, Z, and uh, and this deals with the peoples that came from that. So this is extremely science fantasy. So there are like laser guns and swords and sorcery and psychic powers and such. And these are the people from that planet, Naboru or Nibaru. And if you take a look at their skulls, there's a reason why the ancient Egyptian, like you ever see some of the images where there's like Nefertiti and they've got the tall hats. It's because their cranium sticks up in there. Kind of cool, kind of fun. And take a look at this. It looks like a barbaric person with a laser gun and such. And these are all like character class options and whatnot. And very, very science fantasy. If you don't like mixing like science fiction and magic and pulp action, this isn't the game for you. But if you love the idea of John Carter of Mars, this is it completely. As a matter of fact, it even brings up the idea that aliens actually genetically modified Earth, and so like this is an image of Earth at that time. So while there are landmarks, we may recognize some of them. All of the cities and the names and the places that exist in this world are completely different. And it talks about the day-night cycles. There's a new time system, all kinds of things, because aliens have basically taken over the Earth or are in control of the Earth, and humanity is just living in it, that kind of thing. It even goes into the names of the names of items that ancient peoples would have. So we don't call them laser guns and spears. Instead, it's a Gita or a Gita Ma and things like that. You can get really deep into it, from boomerangs, boomerangs up here, to meteor hammers, to spears and pole arms and laser guns and things of that nature. So um, I actually interviewed this person. I don't have a recording of it. Chris Miller at a was it Gen Con or Origins here in Columbus, Ohio, and got a good look at it. So yeah, and this is a big thick supplement about Africa, and although I think it was called Africa at that time, but it goes into a lot of deep. uh, it's a lot of words in here. It's almost, I would dare say it's almost a dissertation on history and history and conspiracies and ancient ancient aliens. It's a very strange, awesome setting that is very different. But I love it because it again, it's a very Bronze Age writ large. All right. Showed this off before. Going to show it off again. This is White Wolf's The Mummy, and I think this is a very great. It's another setting system in the White Wolf thing. Die 10 dice pool, but you play mummies, and so it has a lot of Egyptology in it. If that's the kind of thing that floats your boat, there's actually three. I've got this one and the player's guide. This mummy came out first. There was a rewritten version of this mummy, and then there's a mummy second edition, and then believe there's also a mummy version V20 after 20 years. But uh, again, what I love about it is it's all Egyptological. I love it. Now, the player's guide goes into the Amente, which mummies from other cultures from around the world. So there's South American, there's a Japanese mummies, or a version thereof. There's Central American, Aztec type. So they went out of their way to not really sit themselves hanging around the European theater. All right. again, I brought this up before, Vampire the Dark Ages, and I would combine that with something called Veil of Night, which is a source book for Dark Ages that happens in a detailed history of the vampires in the Middle East, complete look at the dark city of Damascus. I love Vampire the Dark Ages because while it very much embraces an ancient dark history of the Mediterranean. And so you get a lot of different looks at everything from Italy to Constantinople to areas along the northern coast of Africa. And so for me, this is my choice for, like, if you want to do fantasy gaming, Dark Ages for me would be the one. Now, in the initial book for Dark Ages, it is very Eurocentrified. If maybe a little bit of it is Persian and deals with the Crusades, and this supplement, Veil of Night, goes all the way, like I said, into Damascus and Turkey and that region. Although I don't know the names of the regions at the time of the Dark Ages, and of course, because it's the Dark Ages, like this is a dark world version of the Dark Ages. It takes the real world things and twists them and places even some important peoples as vampires, or suffered injury or death or something from vampires in this world. So yeah, very much. There's just some NPCs when you're traveling around in the various regions of in the Middle East, and I really love the idea of that. I really love it. It's awesome. Boom, 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 boom. They come up with new bloodlines. Um, so yeah, okay, get rid of that because I can't forget, guys. I don't have my original books, but I brought these out. Can't forget Dark Sun. Um, Dark Sun, Dark Sun, Dark Sun. Can't forget that. I think I so many people have been asking about Dark Sun for fifth edition, for Dungeons and Dragons to bring it back out, but we still have the books. The books are actually available. I believe they're scanned pictures of a lot of the materials for Dark Sun. Yes, the rules may be old, but the materials out there are still good. So it's pretty cool. Dark Sun, Dark Sun, Dark Sun. Um, Dark Sun is it has a culture of its own. It is dark. It is survivalistic. It is brutal. Got to put a shout out for Dark Sun. Mike says you can't say Constantinople without someone saying Istanbul. Yeah, yes, it's our Marco Polo at home. Who knew they might be giant? Who knew they might be giants would affect pop culture with one song? Yep. Um. Ooh, wow. Banging on my thing. Um, A Dead Man's Guide to Dragrongrin. I was consulted slightly on this. I don't consider me to be to be a writer or creator on this book at all, but the guys over Absolute Tabletop consulted me on this, and they were talking about um the best ways to make this book inclusive. And one of the things that they did was, and I this again, this is a credit to what Dead Man had mentioned before, is that they went out of their way to not mention, like, real world cultures. And as a matter of fact, in the book, there is a see if I can find it. Um, so in the book, what they did was they made some imagery and objects and things like armor and weapons and things of that nature without any people in them, which is kind of like there's like floating images of armor. I should have dog eared it, but I didn't do it. But there's like you'll see a cloak, but you won't see any person in it, right? You'll see maybe people like masks and weapons and stuff, but you won't see the people in it. So you can imagine yourself as one of these cultures or one of these people in the faction and stuff. Now, of course, you have to have your bad guys and stuff, right? But I love the fact that here's another thing that I think people need to remember about wanting to be inclusive guess what? Part of being inclusive is to make assholes out of us too, right? So you got different people, bad guys. There's somebody with some dark skin, evil. I'm pretty sure. There's somebody else in there. There's all kinds of different people. What clean cut black dude? What is he? Probably evil, right? So it's making it's just making everybody part of everything, and so for me, it's it's not a matter of focusing on one particular culture or anything. It's just stick people in the background. Stick somebody in the background that's of a particular uh, visual look or cultural appearance or something like that, and just to include everyone. Um, Two more. Ooh, wow! I don't even know if I can get this in here. All right, two more. Degenesis. Yeah, because evil's colorblind. Hell yeah. 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 Don't just make one culture or one group or one people's the good people, the good guys. Yeah, you gotta mix it up there. And I think that's the best way to, if you want to be real inclusive. I mean, if you really mean it, yeah. Like what was it? There was a period of time when they didn't want to put handicapped people in television shows and movies. And I'm like, why? Just stick somebody in the background, whatever. It doesn't, they're just regular old people, right? And then when they started doing it, it was like, oh, wow, that looks like the real world, right? Somebody sitting behind a desk. Are they in a wheelchair? Maybe, maybe not. Does it matter? No, right? But when they are there, it's like, oh, yeah, okay. Degenesis. Oh man, they've got a beautiful website. When we focus on this, it's going to be awesome. Okay, so just took the books out the slipcover. They are they are a monster. But what I love about Degenesis is, again, this is a post-apocalyptic world that really focuses in on the Mediterranean. So all the red that you see is ocean, and so there's a large swath of the top of Africa here, and then the renamed locations around. But what I love about it is, and especially because the artwork is top notch. The artwork is top notch. Um, did they make everybody the bad guys? There really isn't any bad or good guys. This is post-apocalyptic, and uh, the artwork in here is, oh man, it's it's the amount of, okay. So the people that made the game, I got to start from the beginning. The people that made the game are a German art house. They are designers by nature, and they also love role playing games. And so they took all of their design work and decided to show it off in a role playing game, and it is spectacular. And again, they made they equally made everybody assholes, which I love, including the survivors that live in Africa all the way up to um, the present day. Yeah, Deadman says Degenesis is available in PDF form online, free. DBJ has less than half a quarter of all their books. Yes, there's some, and all the books are great. All right, here we go. Last bit. This is going to be hard to display up here a bit, but you'll see. This is Everway. These are the two books that were reprinted. It's from Jonathan Tweet. These are the Everway cards. This is the original game, the original Everway boxed set. Um, the original box set. Let me pull the top off. Ooh, there we go. Let's pull the character sheets out because I want to show what's inside the box set. The box set comes with player and game master books. These were then reprinted and turned into two thick ass gaming books. Okay, there were cards that came with the game. I got the extra bonus cards that came with the game, and the artwork for the cards was intended to be used as prompts, because on the back of every card there were questions and things like that, and the art is just, it's just incredible. The art, I mean, let me see if the camera will allow. Come on, focus in. There we go. The artwork is just, no, my hands aren't being steady enough, and my ring light is way out there. I didn't realize they were all sideways. So the idea about all the artwork was that instead of coming up with your own thing, you would just pick random cards and use them as you see fit. So, for example, you would just pull this card out and you would say, "Hey, here's a city," and you'd come up with some background for the city, and then you use that for the city. Or maybe the card was something, a memory from one of the player characters or whatever. But what I love about the game is that they had these pre-generated characters, and you had a character like this guy, and his name is Cleft. It's right there at the bottom. That's his image. You can see him in a. You can actually see his face here in the watermark. You had some capabilities. You had some questions because these characters were like not really filled out. You had a limited background, why they are adventuring, and then here you have the character sheet. And this is the game that doesn't have a die system to it, and so your character capabilities were like air and then water and earth and fire. And then if you combined air and fire together, is your energy. Air and water together makes wisdom. Earth and water together are integrity. And then earth and fire together are power. And then, of course, these are the stats. So air represents thought, fire represents action, earth represents might, and water represents feelings. And then, of course, along with those, you have feelings. Water is silent. Water is receptive. Earth is mighty. Earth is resistant. Earth is passive. Fire is action, forceful, and active. And then air is focused, spoken, and thoughtful. And strangely enough, this game doesn't really have a combat system. And so your stat represents how good you are. If your stat is lower than someone else, it's a great system. We're going to go into a lot of it. But even if this is well ahead of its time. This was back in the '90s, and even the character choices and artwork for a lot of these characters was just sweet. Cultural. There's 50% ladies. The guys are from all walks of life. This is a Bronze Age setting, and it's actually based on Magic the Gathering. Strangely enough, these are planeswalkers, and they travel through different planes of existence, existing in worlds created by the the game Magic the Gathering. Now, this is back in the '90s before Magic the Gathering became what it is, but yeah, I love it. I love the fact that it's very inclusive. Now, this game is very much Everway is very much a um, how do I say it? It's very much a ooh, um, tarot card, numerology, astrology um, based system. So with the new set came with a deck of cards, deluxe fortune deck, and the fortune deck is like a deck of tarot cards. So this is the back of them, back of the cards from the new set. This is an explanation on how to read the cards and various methods to read them. It gives you all the symbols, what they mean, the fortune deck patterns, and then on the other side, all the rules are here as well. Spring, summer, autumn, winter. And then when you look at the cards, they are tarot cards on the bottom. Let's see if there we go. On the bottom, it tells you what they are. Let's go with the eagle. There we go. The mind prevails, eagle. And at the top, it's got a number to it. So maybe you want a random number, you have that. It has a symbol. That's a symbol of air. And also, if the card is picked and it's upside down, it means the worst part. So it says thoughtlessness. Also, in the upper corner, it's got the number Roman numeral 4. So there are ways to get random numbers from these cards. Um, each one is like a tarot card. Maybe it starts to manipulate the. Um, uh, Here's a very popular one: drowning in armor. Right. So maybe a armored character in a fight, the actual wearing of armor may work against them, and so Maybe there's a difficulty of 5 because they're wearing armor. Or maybe the difficulty when traveling means that they're going to have to take their armor off in order to swim across a lake or something. This is where safeguards turn dangerous. And then there is a symbol here for the zodiac. There's a symbol here for water. And if it's turned upside down, it's called true. It says true prudence. And then there's Roman numeral. What is that Roman numeral? 14? I think it's 14. But yeah, Everway. So, guys, that was a big chunk. It went on for quite a while. Difficult to run through all these games and things like that. But uh, I, there will be the opportunity to actually go through each one of these games one a day because there's a lot of them. Some of them, of course, you've heard about. Others you haven't. So thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it, guys. I know it's like yeah, Deadman says Everway was a pre-Hasbro WotC product. It sure was. Sure was. And as a matter of fact, let's see. This is the new game, Silver Anniversary Edition, 95 to 2020, and 2020, all rights preserved. 1995, Jonathan Tweet. And Jonathan Tweet's been in the RPG community for quite a time, quite a long time. But anyway, guys, this is the Game Masters. This is the Game Masters book. Got a huge font, so that makes the page count go up. But the artwork is sweet. This game is very much about exploration, discovery, problem solving, immersion, and stuff. So yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to bring up a bunch of. I listen. This may not be the most exciting thing. Thank you, there, Zabar. This DBJ today's stream was great. These are my picks that of games that I own, mind you. So that's very important. If you guys have just like, you guys have any great ideas for games that are um, along my mindset of maybe they're about many different world cultures. Maybe they don't have a culture of their own. Something that again, Deadman brought up. Maybe there's a game that some of my didn't make the list, but are great games, or games that basically don't mention anything about any particular gender or race or something like that. Maybe it's got a really interesting, cool setting that isn't related to anything real world, or maybe it is related to something real world, but it twists it so much that it's so unique and strange, like an Eclipse Phase for me, that man, it really makes you really, really think about the world in general. So, guys, thank you very much for the stream. I really appreciate it. Again, I will try to make a schedule for each of these games, but for right now, I realize I had so many of them that I pulled out, and others that I didn't even bring up, that it's going to probably take all month. But great to look at some new games, and I thought I'd look at it from, a person of color's point of view, and of course, looking at it like I brought up, like, what is this? To put this huge ass box set of Degenesis up in front, right? Like, it's not about this is how you role play black people. No, 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 no. This is about like, man, if you really want to, maybe you're gaming with somebody online from a different culture, a different country or something, and they're like, man, I really would like to play in this kind of world, or I'd like to bring in my own blah 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 blah. Like, hey, these are some games. So um yeah, things. There was a brief surge of diceless RPGs in the 90s. If you thought EOD players were pretentious, try talking to proponents of diceless RPGs in the 90s. Yeah. Amber was another one. That was a diceless role-playing system. It was a diceless bidding system, I think it is what it was referred to, something like that. Yeah, thankfully things have changed, because there was a bit of like talking with your teeth closed and your pinky in the air, like, oh yes, I play diceless games. I'm not like you, lesser folk. Oh, Deadman says Everway is now published by the Everway company, probably because uh, when game companies had a downfall, they probably did they made a comeback, and some of those creators scraped back their own products, and so that's probably why the Everway game, it's not a box set anymore. I'm sure this is hella expensive, but with the new set, the Game Master's book and the number one the Player's book, and there's a rare Sphere Walker's book out there somewhere. I've seen it on eBay at like $600 or something. I haven't looked at it now, but yeah. Oh, World of Darkness. That's what you meant. Okay, yeah. World of Darkness. People were like, my fingernails are black, and I wear a long oiled cloth trench coat. Leave me alone. I, Zamar says I missed the surge of world creation systems in the early 2000s. There were so many world systems out there, which is the fear of siloing that's happening, that some people have a fear of now, like myself, where like Dark Sun didn't play in the same place as Al Qadim, which didn't play in the same place as these other gaming things and such. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Um, if you missed it, just scroll through visually and look to see if you see a title of a book that you've seen or haven't seen before. When we go through each game individually, I'll put all the links involved in it. Some of the games that you may not be able to find or whatnot. But again, I just wanted to spotlight some of these because some of these game creators didn't intend for someone like me to like them, but it's their fault. They made me like these games. So guys, have a great one. I will see thee later. Peace.